Good evening, everyone. Welcome inside the 7 Sportscave. Football is back. We've been trying to say that for like, what, months now, but we can actually physically say it because we have wins and losses to talk about. Greetings, everybody. I'm your host, Justin Rose, joined today in the Sportscave by Will Birchfield from 97.1theticket.com, Kyle Meinke from MLive Lions beat writer. Guys, how was your first college football weekend? Did you enjoy it? Did you get to take it all in? I know you went to South Bend.
It was refreshing. It was a long time coming. I needed it. Needed some football back in my life. I got it. I feel like a new man.
I feel like a lot of people feel that way because it is kind of school's getting started again. It's a refreshing part of like the year. Kyle, how many games did you watch? Hours?
As a Lions reporter, I got to say I'm jealous because I got football back. I have another week to go. Another like 7-8 days. I spent the weekend crunching some Lions roster cuts. That was
wow.
Some surprising cuts in there.
Yeah.
A couple surprising ones.
Riveting stuff, the cuts that we kind of saw coming. By the way, we're not going to talk at all about that fourth preseason game.
Thank God.
I'm just
or just the preseason in general. Can we just wipe that whole thing clean?
Have to do that as well. We will talk a little bit about the Lions coming up. We have to talk about the Khalil Mack trade to Chicago and the ramification it has for Detroit because it's got some. And we'll talk about things as well from your perspective. Use the hashtag 7Sportscave. Coming up later on in the show, I will get to your tweets. So we want to do that as well. But we have to start with college football. Michigan State will be a little bit later in the show, but we have to start with Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines because I don't think there's a lot of happy people out there, guys.
No.
I don't feel like some Michigan fans are going to be holding on for hope much longer.
Well, Harbaugh's making about $100 million a year, I think, or so, and you've got. I feel like
give or take.
I feel like that program's in exactly the same place now as it was years ago.
Yeah.
I think that's the frustrating thing. Is like I think you can deal with a loss. I think dealing with a loss the same exact way you've been dealing with them for years now against all of your rivals is what's really frustrating.
And this season was supposed to be a better offense anchored by a potentially historic defense. And last night's defense was good, not great, and the offense was better marginally, but really not. I mean, their first TD when they scored with 2 minutes left in the game. So the Shea Patterson hype somewhat fizzled in game one, and the defense that was supposed to be amazing was just solid.
Yeah, Shea Patterson, I think that, there's a fizzle factor there, I think, for sure, based on the way he played. But then again, you watch that game, he had no time to throw.
Right.
And that's like a quarterback. Like, I don't think we even know yet what you have in Shea Patterson because he couldn't do anything. You can't. That's what I've seen with the Lions for years now. Like, I mean, Stafford's been pretty good at times and not as good at other times. But when you don't have an offensive line, you can't do anything as a quarterback, and he had no time last night.
I will say he definitely had more zip to his passes than some of the more accuracy than some of the quarterbacks that we've seen come through here before. But you're right, the offensive line, and it almost is, gosh, SOW, same old Wolverines. And literally, and that's what the fan base on Twitter and on Facebook has been over the last 24, 48 hours. It's a bunch of upset people that we were supposed to see changes to this offense. We were supposed to see an offensive line that was improved. The defense was going to be even better than they were, and they were 3rd overall. Now, that doesn't mean that the season is over, scrap the program by any stretch, but when you think about what they could have done by winning that game in South Bend and how that would have helped set up the table for them, Will, what was the vibe in the locker room after the game last night?
The vibe was interesting because they were already talking about after the first game of the year, well, we still have all our goals ahead of us. You don't want to hear that on September 1st. That means you've lost. That means that you're making excuses. You're trying to justify that the season still means something. To hear that on September 1st was jarring because you realize they're already in the hole here. Harbaugh wouldn't deem it a setback. He avoided that term. He was asked twice, is it a setback? He deflected. But it is. I mean, this was a prove-it game and a prove-it season. And it was, beat a road team, beat a ranked team on the road, marquee opponent, monkey off the back, and they got none of that done. And that's frustrating for fans, especially.
I mean, the truth is that is a difficult game, especially to open the year. There's no mulligan, right? They have to go into South Bend in prime time against a top 15 team. That is a difficult situation. But the thing is that this is why Harbaugh was brought in, was to win games exactly like this one. I know that it's tough, but he was brought in to win the tough games, and he just has not done it, and has not done it consistently, and his teams are making the same exact mistakes they have for years.
This is some of the stats and some of the numbers that are coming out now in the aftermath of that loss are really starting to open not only my eyes, but people's eyes, fans' eyes as well. Jim Harbaugh, 9-9 in his last 18 games. I mean, this is a guy that came in and took a program that was winning, medaling, 7, 8 games, to 10 wins in this first season, 9 wins in his second season. And here we are now looking at these two former head coaches of Brady Hoke and now Jim Harbaugh. 1 win, Jim Harbaugh's advantage.
Yeah.
That's it. And his rival record is only 1 game better than Hoke's was.
Yeah.
It's staggering, the fact that people are starting to jump on the bandwagon. And I guess I'll pose it to you guys. How much is Jim Harbaugh's job maybe starting to be at least plausibility to be thought about as something that's on the hot seat?
He's got a really long leash. Ward Manuel is going to back him up until he basically burns down the big house. But the fans might do that soon if he doesn't start winning games. I mean, look, it's a 4-game losing streak. First time that's happened since the Rich Rod era. And Harbaugh in the past 2 years, for more stats, is 0-6 as an underdog. So they're not beating the teams that they have to beat to move up the rankings and maybe make the college football playoff. They'll beat SMU and Iowa and Indiana, but they want to see them beat Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State, and they're not doing it. And that's going to end up costing him if it continues.
What shows so shocking to me about that, because you're right, their record against the meddling teams is really good. Yeah. And the way that they beat those teams is, I remember Rutgers a couple years ago was like 77 to nothing or something like that. What's the difference, Kyle? Why is it that they, kind of just pee themselves in the big moments? I mean, that's literally what it is.
Well, if I had the answer to that question, I'd be making $8 million a year at the University of Michigan, you know? I think what's frustrating is when you watch those games. Jim Harbaugh comes from San Francisco, and before that, Stanford. And even when he was at Stanford, he ran what was considered a pro system. And you talk to people in the NFL game, they love drafting guys out of Jim Harbaugh programs because you know what you're going to get, because it's pro systems, and that the quarterbacks are making read the whole works. And you just have not seen this Wolverines offense take off like you would have expected from a guy who had that kind of reputation. And you see, I mean, especially the offensive line. Why can these guys not block after 3 years or whatever it's been? I mean, these guys cannot block. And I'm telling you, I think you look at the raw skills of Shea Patterson. This team, I think, just like a lot of other teams, are going to go as far as the quarterback takes him. Yeah. He has the skills, but you've got to give him some time to work through those reads. See that this is not a spread offense designed with the quick little outs and everything. I mean, you need some time for these plays to develop, for Shea Patterson to work through those reads, working in a new offense. Until that happens, I think you're going to see more struggles like this against good teams.
Will, what was your take on the game plan and the play calling as far as that went? Because to me, it didn't look like they got into any sort of rhythm. Now, granted, that's part of that is Notre Dame's defense doing. Listen, I just want to make sure I preface this. Notre Dame is a good football team. They're going to win a lot of games this year. There's no doubt that Notre Dame is one of the top 15 teams and in the conversation for a college football playoff spot. Michigan's still not out of it. They can do what they need to do but that offense, there was no rhyme or reason to a lot of the plays that they called. And you watched it and you kind of saw, first down and then punt. And you're like, well, wait a second. You just had some success. So being there, watching it, seeing it, did you feel the same vibe?
They seemed to ease into it, and they didn't want to really let Patterson loose until they were down 21-3, 21-10. And by then it was mostly too late. First half was run, pass, or run, pass, run. And they were always behind schedule, 3rd and long. And they weren't letting him loose until they got down big. And then the last drive to make it 21-17, it took forever. And they were burning clock as they were at the line of scrimmage, and there was no urgency. But besides the O-line, there's not many playmakers for Shea on the outsides. Even when he did have time last night, guys like Nico Collins and Peoples-Jones and Grant Perry weren't open for him. So there's a dearth of O-linemen, but also like game-breaking talent besides Shea Patterson, and you need that to compete with teams.
I look at it this way. Look, they've got Western Michigan at home next week, then they've got SMU at home, then they have Nebraska at home. So you've got some time, if you're a Michigan fan, to shore some things up. They should blow out both of those teams. We should see a rejuvenated thing. But look, Michigan's schedule is not easy. And I think we all can agree that there's a couple more dits coming on that loss side of the scale. So starting the first game of the year with a little bit of a disappointing one, probably not boding well for them.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, all right, Michigan State also played a pretty big football game, and it was a lot closer than a lot of people would have imagined. However, a win is a win. We'll get to the Michigan State-Utah State talk, what it means for the Spartans as they go out to the desert next week and play a very, very high-speed Arizona State team. That's coming up next on the 7 Sports Cave. We'll see you in a second.